The 2024 SEC conference opponent schedule was released on June 14th. And while there were still some people complaining about the fact that it's only an 8-game schedule, the majority of the college football media, at least the ones that really love the sport, they came across as pretty excited about some of these matchups that we're getting in the SEC. Now, before we roll through some of the schedules, I'll give you the top 5 games that I am most looking forward to seeing. So we'll start off with this one. Georgia at Alabama. That's number 1. There's just something about these two teams meeting in the regular season that really gets people fired up. Like 4 of the last 5 times these teams have played, it was either the SEC championship game, twice, or the national championship game, also twice. In 2020, the only regular season matchup since 2015, it was the second most watched game of the regular season behind Notre Dame and Clemson. And that game ended up being an overtime game on NBC the night that Biden was announced the winner of the election. So needless to say, Georgia-Alabama is going to be the biggest game of the day, no matter when it is played during that season. Number 2, Texas at Texas A&M. I mean, how could this not be your number 2 here? I mean, it's likely a lot of people's number 1. It's going to be the first time the rivalry has been played since good old Justin Tucker kicked that field goal that broke the hearts of Aggie fans everywhere in that 27-25 Classic on Thanksgiving night back in 2011. Now, these two fan bases hate each other, and I am beyond excited that we're getting it back. Number 3, Tennessee at Oklahoma. Josh Heupel gets to go home. Not to mention, these two fan bases, it's a bit of a rivalry game. They don't get to play all the time, but it's 2 iconic brands with 2 big fan bases that are both going to travel, right? You're going to have a lot of Tennessee fans in Norman. These two played a non-conference series back in 2014 and 2015. Oklahoma rallied from 17 down to win 31-24 in Neyland back in 2015. 8 years later, the Vols are now headed back to Norman to try and get a little bit of revenge. All right, number 4 here, Florida at Texas. These two teams have only played 3 times ever, and the last 2 were in 1939 and 1940. Now, I want you to think about that. We have not seen Texas and Florida play since before World War II. I think Austin is probably going to be rocking for this one regardless of records. It's 2 big brands. But seeing those 2 helmets, and then, of course, you've got the added storyline, Arch Manning playing against the team that his Uncle Peyton never beat. That should be a whole lot of fun. Number 5, and last one that I'm going to give you here, Oklahoma at LSU. I am wishing so much that this game is at night. I cannot wait to see the looks on the Oklahoma players' faces when they come out of the tunnel. I mean, they're walking into Death Valley at night, if we're lucky enough to have that happen. These two teams have only played 3 times. Oklahoma whipped the Tigers in the Sugar Bowl back in 1950. Saban's bunch in 2003 beat Bob Stoops, Big Game Bob, for a BCS national championship. And then Joe Burrow's bunch in 2019 whipped Lincoln Riley and Jalen Hurts, basically like an FCS school. I mean, it was 56-14 before LSU took their foot off the gas. All right, let's look through some of the rest of the schedules here. If you didn't already see it, the Mississippi State AI-generated mascot schedule was hilarious. Definitely go take a look at that one. Florida, that's the first one we'll start with. They were done no favors with their schedule. They're one of the teams that voted for a 9-game schedule, but I would imagine after looking at this, I am very curious if they don't go back on that. They've also got that season in their non-conference. They got UCF, Miami, and at Florida State on the schedule. So, yeah. Yikes. Alabama got a gauntlet as well. Road games at LSU, Oklahoma, and Tennessee. They're hosting Auburn and Georgia that year, and they've got a game in the non-con at Wisconsin early in the season. And I'll tell you what it made me think. Makes you wonder whether or not they gave Alabama the Georgia game because of Nick Saban leaking and griping about their 3 permanent rivals being Auburn, LSU, and Tennessee if they moved to 9 games. So, Sankey said, all right, well, we'll go on and give you all 3 of them, and we'll give you Oklahoma and Georgia on top of that. Arkansas is another one. Season ticket holders got the dream home game schedule. They got LSU, Ole Miss, Tennessee, and Texas all coming to Fayetteville. That's pretty cool. None of the road games are too scary, so Arkansas got set up. I'm sure Arkansas fans feel like this is the first time that the SEC has not screwed them. LSU, their schedule, they see Alabama, Ole Miss, and Oklahoma at home, but also road games at South Carolina, Texas A&M, Florida, and Arkansas. Ole Miss gets to host Oklahoma. That pairs Lane Kiffin against his former OC Jeff Lebby, so long as everybody's still there, of course. South Carolina travels to Oklahoma as well. That's a return to Norman for Shane Beamer. He was the special teams coach under Lincoln Riley. Missouri versus Oklahoma, that gives us a little look back at the Big 12, of course, because we did not get Oklahoma and Texas A&M. Mississippi State, they get to host Florida, years after Florida stole Dan Mullen and then dropped him. So the biggest question is, what are we not going to see, right? Like, we're excited about the games that we do get to see, but what are the ones that we're not seeing yet? Mississippi State does not see Alabama, Auburn, or LSU on their schedule. Those are all rivalries that have been played forever. Missouri, Kentucky is gone. That had turned into a pretty good secondary rivalry. We don't see Oklahoma, Texas A&M. I just mentioned that one. And, maybe I'm partial. I think everybody remembers the 77-0 beating that the Sooners put on Dennis Franchione's Aggies back in the day. So I'm very interested to see that one. South Carolina does not get Georgia or Florida. I'm sure they're excited about that. Jimbo and Texas A&M, they get to dodge Lane Kiffin, clowning them for at least one season. Auburn misses LSU, Ole Miss, and Arkansas. Those are, rivalries that have been played every year since 1992. Some of those even longer. Auburn, LSU, Auburn, Ole Miss, those are long-time rivalries. The Arkansas game has been played every year since 92. Georgia gets Auburn and Tennessee at home. Of course, the Florida game, Georgia's got to visit Ole Miss, Alabama, and Texas. And then on top of that, Kirby Smart's bunch, they opened the 2024 season with Clemson. I'll tell you what I'm surprised that we didn't get. We don't have Texas and Ole Miss yet. Like, seeing as to how, Arch Manning, that whole storyline would have been pretty juicy because of, obviously, the Manning presence in Oxford. We didn't get Texas versus Tennessee either. So Arch is not going to be playing either of the schools that his uncles played for. I would imagine that's coming in 2025. Hey, they can't possibly let him leave campus before playing at least one of those teams, right? You want to talk about a missed opportunity. Like, unless... So how about this? Maybe the Mannings have some kind of in with Sankey and the schedule makers, and they just don't... They would like to avoid that. Possible, I guess. Either way, the biggest issue with the way the schedule is set up is there's the possibility with an 8-game schedule of 3 SEC teams going undefeated, meaning a team without a loss in conference would have to miss the SEC championship game. Now, that won't make a massive difference when it comes to the playoff, as, it's expanded to 12 teams anyway. But with an 8-game schedule, there's going to be a lot of 3-team combinations that could all go undefeated in conference in the same season. I believe in 2024, it's 45 combinations, to be exact. So what are the most likely combinations here? You can have a scenario where LSU, Texas, and Tennessee all reasonably could go undefeated in 2024. None of them play each other, and they've all got, schedules that set up all right. You want to talk about an Alabama fan's worst nightmare? That could also happen with LSU, Tennessee, and Auburn all potentially going undefeated. You could see Georgia, Texas A&M, and Oklahoma. Obviously, the odds are really unlikely, especially in a conference like this, but you'd like to have these things set up to where there's a nice little bow on them, right? Like, I talked a couple of years ago about the SEC potentially moving to the pod system. You got 14 pods, and you add a 9th conference game based on conference standings. So all 4 of the pod winners are playing each other, effectively setting up a playoff system to make it to the SEC championship game. I doubt they'd go for that due to the chances of rematches and all that, but, it's fun to think about. But overall, every single week, there's going to be monster matchups that are going to draw just huge TV ratings. I think the SEC did about as well as they could have with this. 2024 is going to be wild. Let me know in the comments what games you are looking forward to the most, because I know I definitely did not hit all of them. Thanks for listening to Winning Cures Everything. Make sure and follow me on Twitter @GaryWCE. If you want to toss in a question, you can email me Gary@winningcureseverything.com. Make sure and hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you next time.